Oh, good morning. Smashing, isn't he? I just love the sense of mystery and unreality about the snowman. It's something that we wish would happen, but never can or never will, as far as I'm aware, although I believe in Father Christmas, so why shouldn't I believe in a flying snowman? But Raymond Briggs, God bless him, brings a great deal of joy. Along with the animators for the television version, although I love the book. And for those of you who may not be familiar, and I think almost everybody is familiar with the Snowman on television, but the book is terrific by Raymond Briggs. Get it for the kids. Mostly get it for yourself. It's wonderful stuff, just wonderful stuff. I just love that sort of thing. Anyway, good morning, and another. We're heading towards the end of another week. What an unusual week it's been. It went chilly as we forecast, but then suddenly we had snow. And after I'd spoken the other morning, I went off to get a cup of coffee and get the newspaper, and it hailed on the way. So we've got some unusual weather around at the moment. Looks as if it might be okay today, but one can never tell. It can take us by surprise, and indeed does take us by surprise. Talking of mysteries, and let's see if we can get him again. Yes, there he is. Talking of mysteries, it's interesting that apparently, according to my good friend Alex Kirby, who puts out a news service on climate change, there has been the discovery of a new galaxy floating somewhere near the edge of our own. Now, my mind actually won't spread to the idea of new galaxies. It can't spread to the idea of an old one. I suppose that it's difficult when you are born and raised and you get as old as I am in thinking of Alpha Omega, the beginning and the end, and the universe is endless is a concept that I can't quite grasp. I have to leave that to mathematicians and scientists. But there is apparently a new and until now hidden galaxy just on the fringe of our own, and one wonders what it contains. Because in the Romans' day, I mentioned the other morning, is we, England, was we were a mystery to them as well. Many people in Rome did not believe that we existed. We were just something that is a land beyond the sea, a mythical land. But we don't really exist any more than a flying snowman. On the other hand, they also believe that when you left France, or Gaul as it was then, is that you tip off over the edge of the earth and not into the channel, until, of course, they explored with early exploration, but mostly with Julius Caesar, who nipped over the channel to see whether he could conquer us fairly quickly. He got himself into a Keystone Cop situation with his boats being swamped and being taken aback by seeing his first chariot and all sorts of other things that got in his way. But I'm going to detail that at some stage on MiradorTelevision.com. And I would suggest that you actually tap in. We have about one or two interesting programs. We are rerunning The Bloody Past of a Tiny Town, which is a acclaimed documentary. It went up and down the country. And it's about Lewis and its High Street and the blood that's been spilled on one short mile and a half over the 1,000 or 1,500 years that Lewis has been around. So do tap in for that, and also by that time perhaps we'll got around to really documenting what happened on that first try to conquer us, and it was it was some jaunt. I'm glad I wasn't on board one of his ships, I'll tell you. Anyway, also one of the things that I didn't know is that in fighting the Romans in France, in Gaul, that a number of Englishmen or English tribes, whether they were known as English tribes then, yes, let's call them English tribes, realizing that the Romans were expanding and deciding that perhaps they should be proactive. And that's good thinking in those days, because you don't get much proactive thinking today. But they would hop over the channel and give the French a hand and say, okay, look, we'll join you and we'll fight the Romans in the hope that'll stop their advance and they'll never get as far as Britain. But what they used to do was, when it didn't seem as if everything was going well, is they would pop back. We'll go and fight. Hang on, chaps. It doesn't seem as if things are going well today. Let's go home. And so they didn't exactly endear themselves to their allies in France. As a land of mystery, we sure were a mystery. But we seem to be very resourceful. And on the other hand, we always think of ancient Greece and ancient Rome being the start of literacy, and indeed that people knew what was going on. But it would appear that some historians believe that the Greeks were sailing the coast of Britain 1,000 years before Christ, and that was some track record if they were. And one would have thought that our country would have been well known in the ancient world. But I suppose if you've ever been to an American city, I always call them city-states, because they know an awful lot about themselves. They have football teams and baseball teams, and they have booster clubs, and they have Rotary clubs and chambers of commerce and so on, all of whom are fairly powerful and fairly important, because the distance between their city and the next one can sometimes be absolutely vast. I lived in Vancouver. The nearest big city to Vancouver was Calgary, which was sort of 800 or 1,000 miles away, and a good drive overnight or a good sleeper on the train. The next biggest city to get to, if you wanted to drive for a couple of hours, was Seattle, but that was in a foreign country. That was in the United States. So I suppose that ancient Rome and ancient Greece were a bit like that, that they knew all about themselves, but they didn't know much about things that are going on. And of course, you can, in some instances, speak to an American in the United States who doesn't know that Canada is his northern neighbour. They do tend, because of the vastness of the country, to look at themselves and not abroad. And I suppose the Romans were the same. Anyway, that's enough to rabbit on about that. But the other thing that I noticed, and I didn't get a chance to speak about yesterday, was because I've always been interested in Indira Gandhi. I've said before, and I'll say again, is when she entered a room, the charisma was huge. I learned the meaning of the word charisma by meeting her and interviewing her. It was overpowering. You could feel the aura as she walked into a room. She was quite a remarkable lady. Anyway, the Indians have just sentenced a man to death 34 years after her assassination for his part in whipping up a crowd at the time, which caused, rioting throughout the country. And it caused 3,000 deaths. And they've only just managed to catch up with sort of the last few people who were responsible. And this man, 34 years, after the fact is going to go to however they. I assume that they hang people in India. I don't know. I don't know if they follow the states with sort of gassing or injection or whatever. But I mean, I think that's quite a remarkable story. Never mind. Now, I see that the Greens on Lewes District Council. Oh, sorry. Here we go, customer first. Sorry. Oh, leave him alone. I see the Greens are calling for a people's vote on Brexit. The people must have a say on Brexit. I'm not going to get into the rights or wrongs of Brexit. That rips people apart, families apart, friends apart. My journalist friend last week, or no, earlier this week that I had lunch with, he said he had some guests who are one side of the realm from the other, and they have to, so to save their friendship, they have to promise that throughout the meal, they're not allowed to talk about Brexit, and just for 10 minutes are they only allowed to talk about politics. Otherwise, they come to blows and probably never have dinner again together. So it's not a bad idea, and I'm not going to talk about Brexit, but they are calling for a people's vote on to decide whether we should accept the final deal that Theresa May is stitching up on Brexit or not. But I do think I'm a great Democrat. I mean, I would love to see us have a vote. And with computers, I suppose, except that computers can be hijacked, of course, with computers, we could vote on absolutely everything if we wanted to. It'd be absolute chaos, but we could. Technically, it would be possible. But the one thing that bothers me a little bit is when, I mean, they're citing the fact that Brexit will have an impact on New Haven and the port and imports and exports and so on and so forth. Yes, indeed, I'm sure it will. But I wonder where they were when a group of people demonstrated about a cement works being built, a new cement works being built on the shores of New Haven Harbour. I didn't hear anybody yelling about the people's vote then. All I remember is that there were plenty of demonstrations. In fact, as I understand it, as I recall it, there were about 400 people at one demonstration saying, no, this is wrong. This is wrong for the environment, wrong for the town, and so on and so forth. And actually seeing how they're trying to regenerate not the prettiest of towns in New Haven, then I would have been a supporter, I think. But I didn't notice anybody coming forward saying, hey, let's have a people's vote on it. No, you can demonstrate, but in the long run, we're going to say, it's not in the best interests of you all. We know what you want, but this is good old Uncle Councils who know better than anybody. We politicians, we're not going to give you a vote on that. Oh, goodness gracious me, no. But so is this opening up a can of worms? If you get a vote on this, if everybody votes on this, does everybody vote on everything else as well? Oh, no, I know. If I got into an argument with a politician, he'd turn it on his head until in the end I'd say, how could I be so foolish to think that a vote for one thing means a vote for another? They're wonderful at debating. If only they were wonderful at something else, we'd all be happy. But anyway, they are calling for that vote. So if you are associated with the Greens and you feel like putting pressure on to have that sort of vote, by all means, get in touch with them or listen to what they have to say. I'm afraid my democracy doesn't stretch quite that far. I see that we've got a cannabis restaurant in Brighton, but if you're thinking of going and popping in and having a joint while you enjoy a hamburger, forget it. Apparently it's the legal sort of cannabis that's used for medicine, and it will be very finely ground into some of the food to make it a little bit better for you to eat and not to give you a high, or at least that's my understanding. I haven't been to the restaurant. I think perhaps I better go and check it out. although drugs and I don't mix. I've never been a druggie, I'm afraid. So I wouldn't know whether I was on a high or not. I'm very pleased that Facebook have decided to junk in £6 million into training journalists to do what in some funny sort of way, we do, and that is local journalism. They recognise that local journalism has disappeared because of the retrenchment of newspapers and of radio and television, and gets only a cursory look. Well, I can understand that, and I don't suppose for one moment that we're going to get any part of that 6 million. It's going to go on training journalists. But there are two things that I would say. First of all, we need it. What I do is I raise issues, giggle at them, get you angry about them, hopefully, or angry at me, and then we get some public debate going about various things. That's the most that we can do. Although I think that probably our opinions are reasonably well informed, and that we've looked at various issues in raising them. But the old-fashioned journalist who went to every council meeting and every committee meeting was gone, and a return certainly would not hurt. So if that 6 million is going to be spent wisely by Facebook, God bless them. I hope that they will have a good training program and we'll get good local journalists back. I have no idea what the outlet is going to be for them. I just know they're going to be trained in or so they say, in covering local politics and local events and local affairs. But one thing that I would say to Facebook is be very careful how you set this up. I've done extensive training right across the continent. I've gone as far as Russia when it comes to training. And one of the big problems, particularly when you get governments involved or big organizations involved, is they choose their own to go and train. And quite often we would bump into trainers from other countries and particularly from the United States, but also from this country, who had never practiced journalism in their lives. They got the job because they'd taken some media course at university, but most journalists didn't want to give up their career to go out and help people in Kosovo or Serbia or Russia or anywhere else for that matter. They're too comfy, thank you very much, and I'm not going to interrupt my career. And I don't blame them either, nor should they. But I hope this training money is spent wisely. So what we do is we get a new generation of young reporters who can report properly on what goes on in our councils, because it is badly, badly needed. What we do is just highlight and giggle a bit to make sure that people are aware. But somebody who is reporting and can dig and do a daily dose of material from the local council is badly needed. So God bless Facebook if that's what they're going to do. A warning to them: be very careful how you set up your training program. Because otherwise what you may find is you've just paid for a bunch of people to sit in a classroom and not do very much of anything. Should I say, I'll set up a training thing for them? No. Let them keep their 6 million. I'm much happier doing what I'm doing, courtesy of Facebook. Thanks very much. All right, see you tomorrow. Toodle pip.